Hello, my little ghosts and ghouls and goblins. Welcome to Horror Becomes Her. I'm Kim, and today I'm going to be doing a review of Over Your Dead Body from 2026. There will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen this movie yet, please go watch it and then come back and check out my review. Straight up, I enjoyed this movie. It was hilarious. The scenes where people got shot or fingers ripped off or faces blew off. It was all, I was laughing loudly, I was gasping. The special effects were great. The acting between the two main characters, Jason Segel, who plays the character Dan, and Samara Weaving, who plays the character Lisa, they did great acting. Well, at the point where they're driving up to the cabin to spend the weekend, they're in the car and there's like bickering and sniping, and you can just feel the tension between them and like the slow burn of hatred. It was so palpable and it was so well done. If they would have just actually told each other the truth and communicated years ago and through the years that they're married, none of this would have happened. But so many people have horrible communication skills. So because of that, this movie like felt perfect, and it felt like so many people, this is so many people's lives, unfortunately. The thing that amused me was towards the beginning of the movie, you see a special news report. And anytime you see a special news report in a movie or a show, you should pay attention to that because it's going to be some foreshadowing. So you see that two killers escaped from prison and a police officer is also missing. Since I had saw the previews, since I didn't know at that point that they had escaped from prison, I thought Juliette Lewis and Timothy Olyphant were like friends of Lisa and Dan and like were coming up to the cabin too. And then like things go crazy and like Juliette Lewis is helping Lisa try to kill her husband Dan, and Timothy Olyphant is helping Dan trying to kill his wife Lisa. That wasn't the case. Okay, so once I saw that they were convicted killers, I'm like, oh, so this is a different twist. So, okay, cool. This is going to be even more fun than I thought. So then they get to the cabin. Lisa and Dan get to the cabin, and they're still sniping and there's still tension. And Dan is starting to clean up the cabin and like doing lawn work and stuff, which, okay, but if I go up to a cabin, I mean, I know these things need to be done, but it just felt like really weird that he was doing this. I mean, I can see maybe mowing the lawn, although there's leaves all over the lawn, so just let the leaves decay and who cares. They'd come into the kitchen and they like, the camera focuses on the knife block and you see one of the knives missing. Now, since I had seen the news report and I knew that the convicts were out and about, I had two thoughts. My first thought was like, did Jason, or I should say their actual names, my two thoughts were, did Dan or Lisa grab the knife and they're going to use that to kill their partner? Or did the convicts hear them coming and grab the knife? Okay, so there was that. And then Jason is still cleaning and there's like some crumbs on the floor, and I'm like, okay, so the killers are either in the house or they have been in the house and left, or they're still outside or something, because Jason Segel just goes, oh, mice. And you're like, okay, well, if you're not paying attention, I guess you don't think anything of it. I'm going to talk about this part that happens later on in the film and then come back. Lisa and Dan are fighting in the bedroom and they have a gun, and the gun goes off and shoots the ceiling of the bedroom. And all of a sudden you hear this like scream, and then the ceiling caves in and then it goes to black. And what had happened is they had shot through the ceiling and hit one of the convicts in the butt. He like jumped and then it crashed down on him. So at this point, when this happens in the movie theater, these two people who are behind me, they're like, what? What's happening? And then I think one of the convicts still had their orange pants on. So the people behind me like realized it was the two escaped prisoners. But then one of them counted out loud and they're like, 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, yeah, because it's the police officer. And I'm like, did you not pay attention to the beginning of the movie? So that just, it made me chuckle. But at the same time, I'm like, people need to be more aware of stuff. And not even just like the media that they're consuming, but like be more aware of your surroundings. So that's a life tip. Be more aware of your surroundings. Make sure to look up when you enter a room too, because you never know what's up there, or see how many exits you have. So, like I said once before, tips on how to survive longer when you watch my YouTube shows. Okay, so going back, Lisa is rehearsing lines because she's going to try out for a play. And her husband Dan is a director, and he like directed one movie, but now he's doing commercials and stuff like that. So Lisa's back is towards Dan when he comes into the room, and he has some chloroform that he's going to make her pass out with. So she's saying this one line repeatedly. I don't remember what it was, but the last time she said it, she also included her husband's name, Dan. So that startled him. She turns around with a taser and zaps him. So he wakes up at the table and he's tied to the chair. And he's like, what are you doing? How dare you do this to me? And she's like, well, you were going to try to kill me, so I'm just going to kill you first. So they're having this like great conversation back and forth at the table that I feel like so many couples have, because so many relationships, unfortunately, have a breakdown of communication, or horrible communication, or no communication at all. And that's what happened with their relationship, as with many. It started out strong, and then they started holding things back from each other, and, they were feeling certain ways and they didn't tell their partner. So now they are at a horrible crossroads. Dan ends up getting loose, and he ends up getting Lisa tied up. Now, in between this, there was another guy that Dan had told that he would give part of the insurance money to if he would come to the cabin at a certain time. And Dan was going to incapacitate his wife, but he couldn't do the actual deed of cutting up her body because he doesn't like blood, or he's squeamish or whatever. And then his plan was to have the body cut up and then weight the different body parts down with rocks and throw it in the lake that's behind their cabin. Okay, so now you have this guy in the mix, and Lisa ends up getting loose, and then there's a gun involved, and he gets shot. So now they're bickering more and back and forth about who was the one who shot him, and it's horrible. And it's so horrible, but you're laughing because it's so horrible. Okay. So they end up chasing each other, and they're upstairs, and they shoot the ceiling of the bedroom. And you hear this loud scream, and then the ceiling crashes in, and they get knocked out. Okay, I'd mentioned that before. Okay, so when they come to, they're both tied up. Lisa and Dan are tied up in the basement. And the two killers and the police officer, and of course, well, I shouldn't say of course, but as soon as I saw the three of them were out of jail, I knew Juliette Lewis was in love with one of them, and it ends up being Timothy Olyphant. So they basically have them tied down in the basement and want to get them to talk to give them more money. So things happen that are horrible. They come to the conclusion that they will end up waiting the night, and then they'll take Lisa, to the bank the next morning to get money. Now, Lisa and Dan know that they're just going to be killed after they get the money, so they're trying their hardest to escape. And they do, and the way that they escape, these parts I don't want to spoil because they're so good, the different things that happens to the different convicts, and also to Lisa and Dan and the police officer, with body parts getting chopped off or bit off or ripped off or whatever, and people's faces getting blown off and people getting stabbed multiple times. And it's just, these were the parts I was laughing at because they were just so extreme and they were well done. There are some parts where I'm like, okay, that's a bit too far. This person would have bled out, or, so on and so forth. But it was just fun. It was just a comedic thriller. I wouldn't really say this is a horror movie at all. It's more of a thriller with comedy. And it did well in both of those aspects. You're like, what's going to happen next? And the comedy was there. With the father, he did his part great when you see him throughout the movie. And what happens to him, I thought was really well done. It wasn't I've seen that happen before in other movies, the way he gets killed, but just the way he sacrifices himself because he was an old grouch, he was a jerk to his son, and he fought in the war, and he's like, I wish I would have died there. So he gets his moment of glory, and it goes on. Now, you also have the scene at the very end, and it involves a rope with Dan and with Lisa, and how she is able to lift him. That was a bit far fetched for me. I can't wrap my mind around that to make it work at all because of what's all tied to him and everything. But I mean, it's a movie. I'll let that pass. It was still super fun to watch the rest of it. So it ends up, obviously, through all this trauma bonding, and they actually start communicating with each other and stop lying to each other, that they get back together, which is, you kind of, there's either one thing or the other thing's going to happen. Either they're both going to die or they're going to get back together. And we got the happy ending of they're both together. So, all in all, I really enjoyed this movie. I will watch it again. I will watch it with my husband when it comes out because he normally doesn't go to the theater with me on Tuesdays. So I would recommend this one if you enjoy comedic thrillers. I would definitely say go watch this one. It's not really horror to me. I mean, there are some horrific parts, but it doesn't have like a supernatural horror bent, or anything like that, or a killer out for revenge. These were just people in the wrong place at the wrong time who got to really extreme circumstances. But if you enjoy the actors, or some or all the actors that are in here, you want to go see it. If you enjoy just extreme situations, thrillers, I highly recommend this movie. Okay, I think that's everything. I'm sure there's more, but I don't want to spoil it too much for you, because it is so good. Well, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the notifications if you would, please and thank you. And I guess we'll see what movie I see at the theater and watch next week, if there is any, because our town's super small. So sometimes there are like no movies at the theater that I want to go see, but hopefully there will be. We shall see. I said see a lot. All right. See you later. Bye.